Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
We've been friends for quite a while, actually, haven't we? And I know quite a bit of your story, but I think there's a lot that people will resonate with and understand, and there's some other aspects that I think around your story as we talk about it that needs to come to light and needs to be a little bit more in the public eye, in my opinion, that you've got some interesting experiences, thoughts to share. And I love that you're willing to talk about this with me. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So so your experience of menopause, you're a little bit older than me, but not a huge amount. And I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
44.
Yeah, 47.
Okay, yeah. And
47.
And you are at postmenopause.
No, so I'm still going through menopause. So I had a hysterectomy, which was planned to be a full hysterectomy. And when I woke up, I found out that I have still been left with part of one ovary, which is doing its very best to
Right.
limp across the finish line.
Wonderful.
So yeah, so I'm not post. I'm still very much peri.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, so I'm kind of experiencing it in yeah, in a different way to I expected to after my operation essentially. So yeah.
Yeah. So can I ask what led up to that decision? Was it a decision that you took, or was that decision taken away from you for medical reasons?
So the decision came after so I was diagnosed with endometriosis when I was 27, but had experienced some really quite severe difficulties from a very early age, kind of always really, but they worsened from around 23, 24. And
Mm.
it had got to such a point that with I think the average time for diagnosis for endometriosis is around 7 years. But it took for me to be in a state of having to go to A&E for that to be found. So that was at 27, and I had my hysterectomy last year in April. And in between that period, I'd had 7 laparoscopic surgeries to remove various different areas of endometriosis and sections of my bowel and various different things because it kind of helpfully grows through tissue.
Mm.
So yeah, it had been very, very debilitating. It had kind of hampered a lot of affected life in sort of quite an extensive way.
Mm.
So yeah, I was 7 surgeries kind of down, and when I went, I really needed to go sort of in 2020, but obviously that wasn't really something that was going to happen at the time. So by the time I'd gone, I literally walked in to the consultant, and before my bum had touched the seat, he looked at it and he said, "Oh, you're 45, so you're here for a hysterectomy." And I said, "Well, I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know. I'd never seen this guy before. He'd literally looked, his classification was my age and said, you're here for a hysterectomy." I said, "Well, I don't know." And, that's what I was hoping to find out here. Because, what I wanted was to look at my situation where I was, look at what my options were in terms of treatment,
Yeah.
be guided with what might be a better option for how I wanted to feel and how I wanted life to be.
So to
And
try
then,
to treat the endometriosis primarily, you were
yeah,
thinking.
but I'd kind of gone with an open mind. If they say to me that hysterectomy is the best option, then, and explain to me the reasons why, and
Mm.
explain to me how life will be improved and what the outcomes will be and any other further implications, then, I was completely open to that. I just couldn't continue as I was anymore.
Mm.
And so yeah, and so he just said, "Well, that's what needs to happen." And he said, by your scans. You know, there's nothing that we can do for you here because you actually need more complex surgery. And I said, I haven't had any scans. And he was, it transpires, was looking at my scans from before the previous surgery.
Oh,
So it wasn't actually looking at current
oh.
information. So I said, well, I would like to have some scans, please, and so that we know what we're dealing with. I would like to know I would like to actually know, before you make the assumption that this is endometriosis, I would like to know that there's nothing else going on. I would like some blood tests. I would like you to confirm to me that, you know, there's nothing else. I think there's very much an assumption as women when we go to the doctors or when we go to a consultant, particularly if it is something that is an existing condition, that everything must be down to that, rather than kind of doing an investigation and making sure, thankfully, everything was fine. But it was something that I had to push for. So he then, you know, when he said about the hysterectomy, I said, that's okay, fair enough. But what are the implications for me for afterwards? You know, what are the pros, what are the cons? And he, you know, he said, if we remove both your ovaries, then you won't have to come back again. Not true. Is, you know, it doesn't get rid of endometriosis. So actually, yesterday and today I've had a bit of a flare up. It's still there. Like, getting rid of your womb doesn't get rid of endometriosis. So I think there's this big, you know, there's a lot of misinformation that comes out, and sometimes that's by social media. Sometimes that's through lack of understanding of a GP, and sometimes even consultants, actually, because they're learning about it all the time. It's not had the funding to
It's
understand.
another example, isn't it, of where science has really let us down in a way that the research isn't. We haven't got the history of research that we need around this.
No, it's incredibly underfunded. So, you know, I don't want this to sound like I am, you know, criticizing the medical profession in terms of, I think I received the best care within the capabilities that were there at the time. But I think then, you know, the training isn't kind of currently incorporated into sort of medicine. But equally, the funding isn't there to inform that education. So yeah, so it was very much a have this done and you'll be fine. And when I asked about okay, so if you take both my ovaries, I'll wake up in menopause, literally straight in.
Yeah.
He said to me, "You're not overweight. How's your blood pressure?" So I don't know. You could take it for me and let me know. And do you have any history of breast cancer in your family? You'll be absolutely fine with HRT. So I said, right, okay. So what are the pros and cons of me taking HRT? You know, what are the benefits? What will that do to me if I don't take HRT? Obviously, I had the kind of benefit of sort of knowing you and you know how you talk about things. So I knew that there were natural options, or you can support your health regardless of whether you take HRT or not, actually. And he literally couldn't get me out of the office quick enough, and I raised a formal complaint because I thought, I'm a confident individual. I'm used to advocating for my health in this regard. And actually, I've got a lot of knowledge existing anyway. There's been countless times where I've gone to a doctor and they've said, if you do this, then this. And I'll say, well, that's wrong because of this research. That's wrong because of my experience in this. If you look back through my notes, you'll see. And so I think it's very easy to just accept what we're told in a medical capacity, when actually a lot of the research either hasn't filtered down to frontline medicine, or it's just not there yet. It hasn't actually happened. So even in the lead up to me actually being told that was what I needed, but very careful to not tell me that was what I needed. It was a very bizarre conversation. There wasn't really any guidance. It's very much you just need to go away and make your decision, which is absolutely fine when you've got all the information. When you haven't got all the information, it's very, very difficult. What I would say, just as a caveat, is that it is the best thing I've ever done. So glad I did it, because my health has improved drastically. But also on the flip side of that, I've put everything into supporting my health pre and post, to feel the best that I can feel. But that has also depended on my knowledge and my expertise and my experience. If you don't have that at your disposal, the biggest thing or the most information that you'll get, the most guidance, is a leaflet that says don't do any hoovering or ironing, because we're clearly stuck in the 1960s still. Don't do any hoovering, don't do any ironing. There's not any guidance about how you take responsibility for your health, your recovery, either pre or post, how you prepare for such a major operation, and how you recover afterwards, because the message that 6 weeks and you'll be fine, there's still a couple of things that a year and a half down the line still don't feel right, and that's completely fine. Other people might not have that experience. It's a very, very personal experience, but that's not the message that's communicated. The message is blanket, 6 weeks, you'll be right.
Yeah, and it's only from you are a health coach yourself, you're in a similar line of work to myself, you have this confidence, you have the ability to look at research, to read it, to have the ability to talk about your own health in a way that feels authoritative as well, and still going through this experience and feeling and going through what you have had. It's still shocking to me to hear that, and it's upsetting for me as well, and to think that there's thousands of other women who might be in a similar position. And it
was
go on.
Sorry. We've just the Amazon man has just come, and Peggy has seen off the formidable foe.
That's okay. Peggy the dog. That's all right. She's lovely. She's not really going to be eating the postman's leg.
I think what I want to get across, though, although I do have that knowledge and I do have that confidence, you're still in a position where you feel incredibly vulnerable, because when I was having these conversations, I was actually put in a chemically induced menopause for 18 months, which I would say is the hardest thing I've ever been through. This absolute shitstorm of chemicals and hormones in your body that actually leave you feeling like I'm not confident in expressing how I feel, because I don't really know how I feel, because I feel everything and simultaneously nothing. It was the most intense thing, and so it was very, very frustrating to me, because I would get, particularly in this instance with this consultant, I actually got very upset. The nurse, when we left the room, the nurse said to me, I'm so sorry for how he just spoke to you. And I said to her, you could have said that in there. But I appreciate that for her, that was also a very difficult position to be in, because he's in a position of authority. And so you do feel that, you know, you have to respect this medical hierarchy.
Yeah,
And which, you know, it was really hard. And I kind of came away crying, and I was annoyed with myself for crying, because then I thought, he's just going to think I'm an emotional mess, and oh, here we go, another one. That was the thought that was going around in my head. And I did raise a complaint, and when I went back for another appointment, the hospital said to me, you can, because it was still during kind of COVID sort of regulations, they said you can bring your husband, which again annoyed me, because I thought, why should I have to have a man with me
yeah,
to be taken seriously,
yeah,
or to ensure that you don't speak to me in a way that is
yeah. In order to get a respectful conversation and to get the answers, why do I need a male presence in the room? Whether or
yeah,
not it, it could, if you weren't married, perhaps it could have been a friend, somebody else. But yeah, that is implied
yeah,
implicitly.
the specific wording was, you can bring your husband. And so yeah, perhaps it would have been, you can bring a friend. At the time, that wasn't the message, and that wasn't what I heard.
Yeah,
And as much as somebody might think that I'm assuming that, it is based on previous things where, you know, nothing's really being taken seriously. And then the question is, and does this affect your sex life? And your husband is sitting there, and you say, yes, it's incredibly painful. And it's like, oh, we can't have that. You know, like, that's the right, we need to do something about that, as if that's the tipping point.
yeah, yeah,
So I think until we view women's health as something other than purely being a reproductive being,
yeah, yeah,
then the conversation won't move on a huge amount, because that is still. And actually, weirdly, there was a lady in having hysterectomy at the same time as me, and she was 30. She had 4 children, and she'd had an elective hysterectomy. She said, I don't want any more children. I can't function with how I feel every month. I don't want you pumping me with hormones and pills and things to stop me having periods. I just don't want it anymore. And the answer to her was, but what if you want another child? She was like, I don't want any more children. I don't want any more. And actually, if I said, as someone with no children, I don't want to have children, and I don't want this. So it wasn't taking her circumstances and her health,
yeah,
her overall well-being. She had
yeah.
to fight to have agency over what happened with her body.
To be seen as more than a reproductive machine,
Mm.
animal.
Yeah,
Very, yeah, it's not right. It's not right. And that's the point of it, really, isn't it? We're not bashing the health service, we're not bashing GPs and doctors and specialists and consultants, and
absolutely.
it's a bigger problem than that. It's a bigger issue.
I have received on countless occasions amazing care, absolutely amazing care. There's not been, you know, so when I've been in hospital having operations, you know, the nurses, the you know, the care that I've had has been great. It's been very supportive, and it's been, you know, I couldn't fault that. It's just the overarching ethos
Yeah,
of where women's health features in terms of importance. You know,
yeah,
if you were born with a womb, you are going to experience a whole range of things, not just you know, kind of when you're sort of early teens, and then when you're experiencing menopause for however many years that takes. But just all the way through, there's this fluctuation, there are these changes, and it's not a standard, this is how you will experience it. Not one woman I've spoken to, not one person who is going through menopause is experiencing it in the same way.
Mm. Yeah.
I think there's an awful lot actually of, and I think it's great the fact that it's being spoken about more. Great. And I also think it's great that you get to hear about the things which, so at the moment, touch wood, the only thing that I am experiencing is a ridiculous, itchy, on my upper arms, nowhere else, just on my upper arms. I've spoken to a couple of other people who've gone, oh my God, I thought it was me, just me, but they've had that too. I'm like, weird, but okay. But equally, I think there's quite a negative narrative around it too.
Yes.
And I actually, and I will fully admit that I was dreading
Mm.
going through menopause. I didn't want to have a hysterectomy because I thought it meant that that's it, I'm old.
Mm.
I'm just getting started. Like I literally, I feel the best that I felt for as long as I can ever remember, actually. And so I think sometimes when you hear the negatives, you hear the things that so that's when people who aren't kind of going through it or haven't experienced it are saying to me, what symptoms do you have? I'm like, do you know
Mm.
what? I don't really want to say. You can talk to me about what you're experiencing,
Mm.
and I absolutely want to hear that. And I might go, oh, me too. Like, or I might say, oh, I've not had that, but I know someone else that has. And because then you can get that reassurance that actually this might be a part of the tapestry of perimenopause. It might be, it might not. It might just be
Yeah.
that
There's lots of
life.
overlaps, isn't there? So yeah.
Yeah. But what I don't want to do is kind of almost put things into people's heads so that you're almost expecting it to happen. And so
Yeah.
you have this
Can become a
this
bit
sort
of a checklist in a way, can't it,
of,
when we're expecting things to happen? And
yeah,
I find that it's often quite difficult to navigate as a coach, as a practitioner, as somebody who supports people through this journey and going through it in the early stages myself. I find it quite difficult to talk around that, to be respectful of and appreciate that for some people it is horrendous. For some people, they do really struggle. For some people, it is a really challenging time of life. And at the same time, I don't want to create a false picture for the people like myself who are at the beginning. And it can be challenging to balance these two views sometimes, and also put across the fact that exactly what you've said, everybody has their own individual experience of it. It's not textbook for anybody. There isn't
yeah,
there isn't a textbook that will tell us exactly what's going to happen.
no.
You
But
know.
I mean, I think you do it beautifully. Like um you talk about how this is an opportunity for people to explore how they feel,
Hmm.
actually, because often, you might get to this age, if you've had kids, you've probably spent quite a significant period of time probably not even considering your needs in the slightest. Maybe you've been super focused on a career, in which case you probably haven't really considered your needs, because until we're made to confront these things, maybe we don't give
Hmm.
that a second thought. And I think you talk about it in a way that invites people to explore how they actually feel and how they would like to feel, and to not just assume, oh, that's it, it's the menopause, I'm done for, like,
Yeah.
you know that's it. But
End of
equally
line.
to be yeah but equally to be able to say, it's okay if you're finding it hard, it's okay.
Hmm.
um but also you do have agency, you do have power in that, of being able to say, right, okay, it is difficult, but what can I do to feel better?
Hmm.
what can I do to feel better? Even if it's just this much better, what can I do? What things can I put in place to support my health? Because again, like the assumption that it is all to do with menopause, a
Yeah.
lot of the symptoms, could be that you have got a very stressful job, that you have got young kids and potentially parents that you're looking after also. You're kind of, getting it from both sides. Maybe it is that, your lifestyle isn't perhaps as health supporting as it could be.
Or
So,
perhaps if we've gone through things in the past where we've, like you said, we've had to place our focus elsewhere rather than ourselves, 10 years down the line, we might end up paying for that now, or 20 years down the line, it can be delayed, can't it?
yeah, 100%. The body stores, it stores its experiences. And I think I think it's an incredible opportunity to learn compassion for yourself.
Oh yeah,
Um,
big time.
massive, massive opportunity to learn compassion for yourself, because it's really enabled me, makes me feel a bit emotional actually, but it's really enabled me to be able to, because my body's changed, right? It's really changed. For a big chunk of time, been incredibly fit, strong, athletic, active, and I had a period of being very ill and having an operation and the recovery and of not being able to do it, and my body changed. And that has taken real commitment actually to look at it with a fresh perspective and be expecting for it to look the same. It's not 22. It's not,
Yeah.
it's 47. It's
Yes.
had 2 kids. It's been through all of this stuff. It's, actually it's put up with all of the mistreatment that I've ever given it. It's just quietly kept on, just doing its best and doing what it could. So actually, like, I look at it now and I think, and it's changing again. Like, I feel I'm the strongest I've been for a long time. And still hate running. You're not going to convert me on that, but there we go.
That's
Um,
okay.
but that there are physical changes happening again, and I'm seeing things improve and I'm seeing things come back. But the ability to be able to look at it and just feel this kind of surge of affection for it, and like the acknowledgement of what it can do, of what it has done, of what it, and anticipating what it will do in the future. Maybe it will be in a different way, maybe it won't. Maybe I'll be even stronger than I was before, because I'm not dealing with everything else that I was dealing with. So I think it's a really good opportunity for compassion, rather than the message that is kind of drummed in from when you're young of you need to be the thinnest, and you need to be, this is how you should look. This is what you should do. Whereas now, like, I was talking to someone this morning, I was like, before it was, when I was in my 20s, it was like, oh, why can't you be thinner? Why can't my legs be smaller? Why can't my stomach be flatter? Now I'm like, shoulders, why won't you grow? Quads, where, come on. You want different things. I want to be a badass old woman, I want to be strong, and so it encourages you to think differently. It's a massive window of opportunity.
I so agree. I see it, yeah, a window of opportunity, and to revise, like a time of revision of like, what are my values now? What do I want for myself? Instead of, like you say, carrying and assuming that it's the same as it was from 20 years ago or more.
It's not, and it's not going to be. And I think, but it's also equally okay to find that a bit sad.
Yes, yeah,
Like, that's okay also. You can feel a loss at that.
yeah, a bit of
And
grieving.
yeah, and also be excited about, right, okay, but this is the potential. Like, imagine how freeing it is to not be as worried by whether someone thinks that the size of your waist is acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or if you're too big or too much or whatever, like the freedom of that, of kind of being more sure of yourself. But I think that that's the message that you convey really well, because you don't ever say this is how you will experience menopause and this is how you deal with it.
Mm.
Right? It's so, there is no one way. It's so kind of nuanced and subtle, and and it is possible to say, I know that these things are really difficult, and if you're experiencing those, it's not it's not pity, it's
Mm.
compassion and empathy. But I think real compassion is not just going, oh. Real compassion is saying, right, I get that that is really challenging, and I get that it's really difficult, but
Yeah.
let's work out how you can navigate it and how you can feel better. And like, to me, that's what you do. Like a, I've I'm yet to have that. I'm yet to have that from anybody that I've seen in a medical capacity. I'm not saying that those people don't exist. I'm sure there are, but I haven't been fortunate enough. And I think that is where things are at the moment, that those wonderful people in the medical profession are dotted about, and they're rare. And they're people that have gone out of their way, outside of, they've sought their own education outside of the medical profession, I think.
And also there's a combination, I think, for a lot of the, you will have seen specialists and consultants, and I'm trying not to paint people into a corner with this, but often traditionally, those sort of medical specialists aren't really known for their people skills. They're very good at what they do in a medical sense, but they're not always that good at being adding in that compassion is not always in their toolbox. But the medical side of things, shit hot, brilliant. They know exactly what they're doing,
Mm.
but yeah, they're not always. And I know, like you say, there are people who are brilliant at both, and are uh, specialists at all of that, and being able to convey that to their patients. But
Mm.
yeah, traditionally, not always been the case.
I think there's definitely a balance in terms of, um, you know, when it's about, you should seek medical advice, and it should be from a medical professional. I fully support that. If you're experiencing anything which is out of the norm, out of the ordinary, go to the GP. Do not be fobbed off with, you're a woman, it's what you've got to deal with. It's absolutely not. And you should, insist on it and say, that's absolutely fine, I will go to A&E then, and I'll tell them when I get there that you refuse to see me and you refuse to help me. So please, if you are experiencing anything, do not ignore it, because you think
Absolutely agree.
you absolutely should go to see a doctor. And if there's any doubt, you insist on a referral. At least get some blood tests done. Be seen. But what I would say is, there's an awful lot of support from people like you, who can, once you know where someone's at, or if someone is saying, I'm just struggling with these kind of, these symptoms of menopause, for example, because I know there are lots of people who have gone to the GP, and now what tends to be happening is, you don't have to fight to get HRT. You actually have to say, no, thank you. Can you help
Yeah.
me? So there are people that are given HRT, and 6 months, 9 months down the line, are not feeling any different. And that's because actually the symptoms they were experiencing were not because of perimenopause. It was probably because of all of those other lifestyle factors that we talked about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, So someone like you who's kind of, GPs haven't got the time to sit down and have that in-depth conversation
Mm.
with someone. You know, you're not going to go and sit opposite Rangan Chatterjee and talk to him for half an hour or an hour and, you know, go away with a very holistic approach to something.
Yeah.
You're sitting down in front of someone who's very stressed and very pressured and has only got 10 minutes tops to kind of get through seeing somebody. So, you know, you're not going to get that depth of investigation into kind of what's going on for you. Equally, there's the other end of the
In
spectrum,
just
which,
one appointment, yeah, it can take
yeah,
several, and we've got time factors around that and getting the appointments and yeah.
yeah, if it's not an emergency appointment, you're going to struggle.
Mm.
Um, so, but equally, there's the other end of the spectrum where you have the possibility of becoming certified in a day or something online,
Yeah.
or you know, everyone being an expert on social media because everyone's now got a platform. So what I would say is, if you know, be we have this tendency to be very binary as humans. It's either this or it's this. But always do your research. So as in into the person.
Mm.
So I know, like, if someone was looking into working with you, there would be, you know, tons of people that they could talk to who would be able to give them their experience of working with you, or join your group, or, you know, whatever, rather than just something that's a kind of clickbait thing on TikTok that
Yeah.
is there, you know. So
It
there's
sort
both
everything out. Yeah.
both ends of the spectrum. Yeah, both ends of the spectrum, I think, but kind of in the middle,
Mm.
there's an incredible amount of like depth of possibility. You know, it doesn't have to be that it doesn't have to be that it's the end, you
Yeah.
know. And even though it might feel like it.
The end of something, but it's not the end of everything, and it's the
No,
beginning of a lot. So it's just
exactly,
different
exactly.
for everyone on what all of that really means, the nuance of it.
Mm,
It's yeah, it's very individual.
yeah. So I yeah, that's my experience of it is continuing. And you know, I'm constantly kind of um just questioning, and I don't mean questioning other people.
Mm.
Actually, I mean questioning inwards. So if I'm feeling particularly anxious, for example, where there have been periods of that where I felt quite anxious.
Mm.
And weirdly, even though I don't have a womb, but I still I have a more definite cycle than I've ever had,
Mhm.
because before it was just like this, you know, just awfulness. Whereas now I have a very definite cycle, and there's a good 3 or 4 days of the month where I don't feel very much at all. Um, you know, like it, but rather than, oh my God, something's wrong, it's like,
Uh-huh.
right, okay, no, my needs are different. My
Yeah.
needs are different right now. So I don't book in kind of calls with clients on those days, because A, they're not going to get the best of me, and B, it's going to deplete me quite a lot. So I actually just, you know, I use that information to manage my time and my needs, and kind of turn up my self-care if I need to, and you know, those sorts of things. Um, so yeah, but that only kind of comes with giving yourself the opportunity to sort of
Mm.
look at how you feel.
Yeah.
Um, and I fully expect that that will adapt and change, and things will be different. But yeah, so it is challenging, but equally, um, my experience of it so far is actually it's pretty exciting. So there you go.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much.
You're
That's
welcome.
great. A great discussion, and I hope we brought out some of the some of the points that will be relevant to a lot of other people. I know that we've touched on, I'm sitting here nodding my head, thinking of various people I've worked with and spoken to, and conversations I've had over the years, thinking of similar experiences. And it's never exactly the same. We can never trace over somebody's experience and say, yeah, that was exactly like that. But there's threads that are often similar, and often the similarities that come and draw people and to be able to say, oh yeah, me too. It's not always that it's the exact same symptoms, experience, problems, issues, however we want to describe it, but it's more that it's the curiosity that they're now feeling around themselves, the way that they define themselves, the identity shifts that they might have, and the compassion and self-kindness. They are two words that come up so often with my clients, and yeah, you're saying that again. So yeah, it's really interesting to hear about that, and thank you so much for sharing so openly, and
Awesome.
um, and to talk about that in a way that we don't often hear about. So I really, really do appreciate you for that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, if it helps one person to feel, a little bit like they've got a little bit more power over their situation, then that's a cool thing. So yeah, thank you for talking to me.
Well, and I will put your details in this video as well, in the details in the description box. So if people want to see who you are and see a little bit more about the work that you do and how it is kind of in parallel to my work as well, then they can go and suss you out there too. But thanks very much, Lisa.
You're welcome.